would show you guys some math, right? Because you guys have heard me say this before. The math is the path, plain and simple, right? And, how many of you say, oh, I'm not good at math? Just type in M for math. If you have said, I'm not good at math, just type in M. I'm not good at math. I don't let people get away with that, but many people say that, right? I'm not good at math. Yeah, type in an M if you're not good at math, or if you've said that your whole life. Oh, I'm not good at math. So I'm going to show you a little bit of math around how you can predict what you will make in the residential cleaning industry. Now, this is easy. Guilty. Yeah. Guilty. Exactly. So there's a lot of people in here. We think math is hard. For some reason, we were told when we were kids that math is hard. And, oh, I got my little elf shirt on tonight. I'm going to some friend's house for dinner. So I'm wearing my elf shirt. And, when I was a kid, I thought I wasn't good at math. And, when I went into business for myself, it wasn't long before I discovered that the math was the path to success. And here's my philosophy. Math is money, plain and simple, and money is fun. So math is fun. So I really want you to lose the belief that math is hard or that you aren't good at math, because trust me, if I can do math, you can do math. And I do simple math, very, very simple math. So, a lot of people in the cleaning industry wonder, well, how much can I make in this industry? If you're a startup, you wonder, how much can I make and when will I make that? If you've been in business a long time, you wonder, how much should I be making and when will I be making what I think I should be making, right? Those are all honest questions, because if you own your own business, you should have a plan as to what you want to make in this industry. So I got my trusty little iPad. I kind of finally figured out kind of a workaround way how to use my iPad and connect it to where you guys can see it. So I'm just going to show you some simple math before I have to log off, because I don't have a whole lot of time. First and foremost, you have to know what is the owner's income and net profit from the business, or really, what is the net profit from the business? If you took nothing from the business and you made sales and you paid your cleaning staff and you paid for your insurance and your light bill and your rent and your cleaning supplies and your marketing bill and, your utilities and all of that, what's left over for me as the owner? Okay. Most of us would call that net profit. And just think in terms of if you took nothing out of overhead. So let's just ignore overhead for right now, that I could take a salary, right? Let's say I pay all the bills of the company. I've paid all the cleaning staff. What's left over for you, right? So let's just say what's left over every month is 10%, right? 10%. That's all that's left over every month. It's not working too great, but it's working. Let's say that's all that's left over. So if you sold $100 worth of cleaning, by the time you paid the labor and the supplies and all of your overhead, there's only $10 left over for you, right? Or if you sold $1,000 worth of cleaning, there's $100 left over for you. Or if you've sold $10,000 worth of cleaning, there's only $1,000 left over for you. So that would be owner's net profit. All right. So in the cleaning industry, the owner's profit, and I like to call it owner's income and profit, because it's whatever you get to pay yourself. Now, I realize you might take some of that and put it under overhead, but it's whatever you get to pay yourself, should fall somewhere between 10 and 20%, right? And I would say most people with a relatively big operation with employees and overhead are only making anywhere from 8% to 16% for the owner. 8% to 16%. That's most people. Now, if you're following the CBF formula, the Millionaire Maker formula that I created for CBF members, if you're in that, if you're in the CBF program, then 10% is too low. We think that's too low. We expect to make about 20% of every dime we bring in, every dime. We want to pay ourselves 20%. Now, what you can do is pay 10% of that as a salary, right? And you could pay 10% of that as a draw or a distribution, and that equals 20% right there. Okay, so I don't care how you do it. Our goal in CBF is to create about 20% of owner's income and profit. So what does that look like in terms of, well, gee, I want to make $100,000 a year, or I want to make $150,000 a year. How much revenue do I need to create? So here's some simple math before I sign off, and you guys can play with it. Let's assume that you are averaging a 20% leftover after all bills paid, cleaners, overhead, everything except owner's income. And let's say there's 20% left over for you. Here's the math to figure out what revenue I need to get to so that my 20% eventually looks like $100,000 a year income or $150,000 a year income. So here's the math. So first of all, everything we bring in is 100% ours until we start paying, right? Our cleaning technicians and our marketing and, overhead and all those other bills. And then we hope there's something left over for me, correct? So we start with 100%. And if I have demonstrated that I can carve out about 20% of that, so what you do in terms of the math is you take 100 and you divide that by 20. And if you just pull up your calculator, take 100 and divide it by 20, what does that equal, right? That equals 5. That's what that equals, right? 100 divided by 20 equals 5. So if I have 20% every month and I take 100%, 100 and divide it by 20, then I get 5, okay? So now let's look at what do we do with that 5. If I want to make $100,000 a year, I need to times what I want to make, my 20%. If my 20% were 100,000, I need to times it times 5, right? So if I want to make $100,000 a year in income, then I have to bring in sales 5 times that amount. So times 5 equals $500,000 in revenue in sales, right? And if you're at a 20% profit margin, then you should be able to carve out $100,000 a year. Now, what if your profits are only 8%, right? All right, then let's take that 100 and divide it by 8, okay? You're going to have to go, let me grab my trusty little calculator here. So 100, somebody do the math, divide it by 8. All right, you're going to have to times 100,000, that'll equal 12.5. Your business has to be 12 and a half times bigger than the salary you're wanting to create. Okay, so I'm going to take 100,000, K, times 12.5, right? Times 12.5 times the 100,000 I want to make. My business has to be, 100, 1, 2, 3 times 12.5. Somebody do the math. If I'm only at 8%, then my business has to do 1,205,000 just for me to generate $100,000 a year living. So it's important as the owner that you know how much profit you have, because whatever that is as a percentage of your business, you've got to times it, times that amount for you to make whatever it is you hope to make. So let's go back to the easy math. Let's say your percentage of profit is 20%. All right, so 100 divided by 20 equals 5. I need to be 5 times the sales volume of whatever salary I want to make. So let's do some more math. Let's say I want to make $150,000 a year. Well, I know if I'm at 20% profit times 5 times, what sales income do I need to get to before I can pay myself $150,000? Somebody do the math and type it in. right? So again, 150 is my desired goal of income that I want to make, times 5 if my profit is 20%. Somebody do the math and type it in. What is the sales volume I need to get to before I can pay myself $150,000 if my profit is 20%? Anybody know? Type it in. So you just take the 150 times 5 and you come up with $750K. So in order, if I'm at a 20% profit margin for owner's income and profit, then if I want to make $150,000 a year, I need to times that times 5. I have to get my revenue to 750. Here's the problem. If it takes me 10 years to figure out how to get to 750, look how many years I spent not making this. A long time. A long time. So I'm not saying you won't get to 750 or even 1 million someday. You might, through a lot of hours and blood, sweat, and tears and trial and error and mistakes. But what if it takes you 10 years to get there? What if you only made $25,000 a year during that 10 years to finally figure all this out, right? So you have to calculate how much time is it taking you to figure this out, especially if you're a startup, right? So this is simple math. It's not hard. Take the profit that you know you make, that you could pay yourself right now. Take that profit, and whether it's 10%, divide 100 by 10. You got to be 10 times bigger to make $100,000 a year. Or you've got to times 150,000 a year that you want to make times 10. That's 1.5 million. Or if you're at 20%, right? Take 100, divide it by 20. You come up with 5. And then you have to 5 times the salary you want to make. Whether it's 60,000, great. 5 times 60 is 300,000. Okay, you want to pay yourself $60,000 a year if you have a net profit of 20%, then you only have to get to $300,000 a year to make 60,000. If you want to make 120,000 a year, you got to get to $600,000. And so just simple math here. The math is not the hard part. It is the structures to make sure you are making 20%, so that 20% is left over to take it as owner income and profit. Or if you only make 8%, 4% owner's income, 4% draw, or however you slice and dice that. Most cleaning companies barely can make 8 to 16% in owner's income and profit. And most cleaning companies should be striving for no less than 20%. So keep that in mind. The math is not that hard. And especially if you're a startup, you need to start with, well, what kind of profit do I expect to make? And then I need to multiply that by the profit margin so that I know what revenue I need to get to before I can pay myself that desired salary. So it's not super hard. Take that 100 and divide it by the number, the percentage of profit that you're at, whether it's 10% or 20%. So 100 divided by 10 or 100 divided by 20. That equals 5, and then 5 times the income you want to make. I hope that helps. Math doesn't have to be hard, but it's one of the most important things we do in business. So I hope this was helpful. And go do some math and find out if you want to give yourself a raise. If your profit margin is 20% right now, then find out, well, what revenue do I need to be at the margins that I'm at right now in order to pay myself 200 grand a year or 250 grand a year or 100 grand a year, whatever that number is for you. So I hope this was helpful. Share in the comments if this will help you identify at what point in revenue you'll be able to pay yourself the desired income you've always believed you deserve. Take care. Have a great night.